Welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. My name is Amber Larkins, published photographer, storytelling expert, visual artist, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach. This podcast was born from one question: how do I get inspiring stories of triumph out to the people who need to hear them the most? Come with me, enter my world, where lives are getting changed, heroes are getting developed, and greatness is being achieved. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Through the Trauma podcast. I am Amber Larkins, your host, and today I have with me Shane Jacob. He is the founder of the Horseman Journey, life-changing programs designed for country teens, farm and ranch teens, and their parents. Basically has programs that increases self-confidence and decreases the chances of depression, teen pregnancy, and addiction. He's also a certified life coach, professional horseman, entrepreneur, author. Shane, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, Amber.
I love talking to people that have a big heart for, teens and just seeing people overcome trauma in general. And I'm very interested to learn more about how you use what you do, the horses and all of these things to really pull together and help people overcome trauma.
I appreciate every chance you get. I'm pretty passionate about the work that we do. And, we're all in this together and we all kind of face similar type situations. And I know I had a hell of a time getting through I think we all do, and so the more that we can learn and share with each other, I think the better. So I appreciate programs like yours. This one really has the people on your show and your show resonates with me for sure. So thank you.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you into doing what you're doing?
Yeah, well, what got me into it is falling flat on my face for a good, a little while, a few decades actually. I came from a place where, I always wanted to be a cowboy when I was a kid. I always saw all the cool Western movies, and I want to be one of those cool guys to do all the cool cowboy stuff. And but as I was a teenager and as a young adult, into my early 20s and even into my late 20s, as I was going through this period of my life, for whatever reason, to some degree, I thought something was totally wrong with me. I don't know what. I just didn't measure up. Wasn't quite the same. Wasn't quite to the bar as the rest of the world. And the rest of the kids that I was with and trying to fit in, and I was, reasonably successful at sports and different groups in school, but still the whole time something's rattling around inside my heart and soul like, hey, Shane, everybody else is you're just not enough. You're not good enough. You're not the same as everybody. You're less than. And these are just like kind of they're just playing in the background. And the thing about it is, Amber, I don't know why. I can't pin it on I can't really blame it on anything. I feel like I had a pretty good, upbringing. I didn't, a lot of the kinds of trauma that we talk about, trauma that other people do to us, those kinds of trauma, I couldn't really say why in retrospect and looking back. Why is all this happening? What? And what am I doing about it? And the thing about it is, I didn't know what I had no idea. I just thought that's the way life was. Well, somewhere along, I don't know, I was a mid-teens, or I don't know maybe what day it was or how old exactly I was, but I got introduced to alcohol, and let me tell you something, problem solved, okay? Problem solved. I felt better. All my inhibitions kind of disappeared for a while, and I was happy. This was cool stuff. I mean, I found the solution, right? And so I really embraced the solution. Part of that was bad behavior. I don't, I don't really make any excuses I just didn't know. I didn't know how to manage what was going on inside of me. So I found another way to manage it. And that's what I did. As a result of me finding that, I eventually, over a period of time, it didn't take very long to where I was incarcerated. I caused, just so much destruction and pain to other people over a course of time. I was locked up for a while, wishing I was dead, wishing I wasn't the one that was inflicting the pain. It wasn't a happy time. It wasn't a happy time. And I finally got through this jail time, and I still had, what was happening was further fueling these ideas that I had to begin with. Now I'm feeling worse about me. What kind of person spends their time in jail? I mean, who are you? And then what you've done to other people as a result of your drinking and driving. I mean, how can you have value? You have diminished yourself further and further, Shane. You don't deserve, you're not worthy, you suck. You shouldn't even be alive, probably. So I'm trying to cope with this because I couldn't, suicide wasn't, I thought about it, but I wasn't really ever on the cusp. I didn't really have the trigger on my finger on the trigger ever. But I had those thoughts, and I just didn't know what to do with me. So once I got out of jail, I went back to the same solution I had before, which was to continue drinking. And I'm going to tell you something. I became a professional drinker. I mean, I was good at it. I drank every day. Listen to this, without exception, for over 20 years, almost 22 or 23 years. Okay. Let me come back to that. When I say without exception, I'm going to give myself 2 days off. Okay. When I was hospitalized, 2 days, literally, in 20 plus years of drinking to excess. That's my life. Okay. And when you have that life, I didn't realize, when I had that life, I didn't realize what was really even happening. What I knew is that I felt better when I drank. And then when I would sober up, I didn't feel good. I was unaware that I had limited my ability to learn and progress in this world. I had limited my earning potential. And most importantly, I limited my relationship with God. And limited my relationships and destroyed and disintegrated and harmed all the people that I loved and the relationships that I had. A couple marriages, bad or non-existent relationships with my children, and those things, because see, the thing of it is, it's not really possible when you're checked out in a mental haze, in an alcoholic haze, for all the time. And let me just give you a little bit of view of what that looks like. Okay. What it looked like in the end, here's kind of what it looked like. I would wake up bright and early, somewhere between 10 and 11:30 a.m. Okay. Every day. And what I would do is I would wake up, I'd spring out of bed, and I'd go, man, my thought would be, I can't keep doing this, man. I can't keep living like this. I felt like shit half the days, gone. And so I felt bad. And I said to myself, I got to do something about this. And so I'd go and I'd try to do my work and my business, because this whole time I'm going to work and paying the bills. So, I mean, how bad can it really be? So I'd go to work and I'd begin that. And then it was a progression, but in the end, it'd be about noon. So let's think about this. I woke up between 10 and 11:30, and somewhere between noon and 2, I'm starting to drink. Okay. And I would drink somewhere in the beginning, it was like 12 beers, and then it got to be 20, didn't even touch it. It was like 24 plus. Okay. And I'm talking about the time I woke up to the time I went to bed, which was beyond, somewhere like 1 or 2 o'clock. I'd fall off into sleep at the end of the day, and then I'd wake up and do it again. Okay. That is my life right there. And as this is happening, everything around me is just like slowly, I think I'm holding it all together. I think everything is okay. And everything is not okay. Everything is not okay.
I can relate to what you're saying there in the beginning of looking for something and not ever really feeling worthy. My story is very similar to that. And I tell people my story, I'm like, I don't have any reason why I did the things I did. I just lacked a lot of self-image, a lot of self-confidence. I had a hard time feeling validated. And I can't really point to why, but it led also in me making a lot of really bad decisions. So I can relate to you there. And the whole thing, like with alcohol, I think specifically it's a deception. Do you think that this is something that people feel with all addictions? Or do you think this is something that is kind of specific just to alcohol addiction?
That's a really good question. We touched on this right before we began this show. If my message is about alcohol or something else, and what I can tell you is that I believe that that the drivers, in other words, what compels us or leads us into negative behaviors, okay, that in the end don't serve us. And also, what leads us out is the same, regardless of what we do to buffer or try to make us feel better. In other words, it doesn't matter whether it's pornography or gambling or whatever addiction or overeating or legal or illegal drugs or alcohol, or on and on and on it goes. These things that in the end we look at, and somewhere inside of our heart and soul we know that they're not good for us. They're only good for the moment. But the things that drive us there and the ways out, I firmly believe are the same. And I say that without having experienced some of those things. But I think that we all, to one degree or another, it's like it feels good in the moment. So, I mean, we're naturally meant to try to feel good and have ease of pain. And so we drive to those things. We may not, to different degrees of how we feel about ourselves, we may be driven to do those things. And sometimes it may just start with experimental, right? We don't know. And so we get into it and it feels good. But then we kind of have this shame for doing it. And then so we keep doing it again. And so I believe that regardless of what that behavior is, that the principles stay the same for driving us in and getting us out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think so too. I know, like for me myself, it's never been like an addiction to alcohol, but I do see certain addictive behaviors, like when I look back over my life. But I'm the kind of person that I'm like, I don't like to be addicted to anything. So now, I'm 44, so like 40 plus years, I'm like, I've learned that as soon as there starts to be an addiction to something, I have to distance myself from it if I start to feel an addiction to something. Um, but I do believe that when you're young, it's really hard to put your finger on that. It's really hard to determine, like, hey, this is an addiction, or this can lead down the path to addiction. In your opinion, like, how do you begin to put those thoughts and ideas into younger people who are really just going through the motions and doing the things that feel good?
It's a really good question. I always look at some of us. Why do some of us learn from other people, right? Because I think we all kind of know, we hear as we're growing up, bad behavior, good behavior, we can kind of judge. And I actually believe that we're born with a God-given compass, if you will, that will know and will feel in our heart what we're doing is right or wrong. And so between what we learn and what we're given, that we come with, I think that even as young people, young adults, adolescents, teenagers, that we know. Okay, I believe that we know most of the time what we're doing is right or wrong. But I think that what compels us to say, hey, that's wrong, and I'm going to use somebody else's example to not do this, or they're still alive, I think I'll try it too, and learn the hard way. Because I'm telling you, experience is a hard way to learn. If we can just look at other people, but then why? We're curious, we don't know. When we're kids, we think we're invincible. Nothing, I mean, that happens to old people. That happens, later on down the road. Nothing happens to me. And so to be able to recognize the actual dangers, I mean, just like awareness, I think we want to have our kids front and center with awareness. I think it's a two-part deal. Okay. I think that what it is that it's really the awareness and really spending time, because it's so important. Okay. It's so important to see what the consequence can be. And the other side, this is a big side, and I think this is one that we lose, that we don't focus on a lot, and that is to put a different goal out there to replace it. Okay. So in other words, here's what I'm saying about that. If I'm a young adult, and the people around me that care about me, my leaders, my parents, my parents, okay, and whatever leaders I have in my life, are helping me to see the consequences and see that this is real, and see that the poison, the danger, the pitfalls of what you can have. And really, what is it? Because it's their own free will to get to choose. So what is to lose? Really, what's to get to lose is, maybe their peace of mind, maybe their maybe their joy in their heart and their life, maybe their dreams, maybe their life. There's so many things to be able to see, to be able to lose, and then to replace that with, or this is where you could be, and really focus in on imagination. Kids are good at imagination, more so than adults. I have a hard time really seeing the future and visualizing it, but sometimes at this age we haven't, it hasn't been cluttered up with you can't do this quite as much. And so we can really see, if somebody helps us focus in on what the laser thing is going to be, to laser focus in on a goal. Okay, and then to follow up and stay focused on that goal. I think, and that's the part of the things that we work on in stable living, to help mitigate or just totally avoid some of these things that, in the end, um, in the end, the one that's in it and the people around them are the ones that suffer. And so what it does is it helps, I mean, it helps, you end up with less suffering.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's a hard lesson. Sometimes it's hard to like explain to people like you have to learn this lesson on your own. It's really hard, especially when it comes to addiction because that's like fighting an inward an, a battle inside. Um, and you can want to be free from it, but then getting free from it is a whole nother set of tasks. Um, so with your coaching program, talk to us a little bit about like maybe some of the clients, some of the people that you have helped or you've seen come through there with these different types of trauma. And well, first of all, just tell us like what is some of the different types of trauma that you do see?
Yeah. So, in dealing with young adults, I mean, it's everything that we see in the world. I mean, that we talk to and deal with people. And I just want to say that, I s- I promote our program with zeal. I believe in it 1,000%, and it is not a perfect program. Every outcome that I want does not necessarily happen. We have tremendous results, but it's imperfect because we're human beings. But the things that we see, which is, of course, all the things you got: over drinking, drug use. Really, depression's a tough one. Depression is a lot. It's more rampant. More kids feel depressed than you would really imagine. And sometimes they don't know how to get the words out to explain it. And so they're expressing it in other ways. But, and then what they do is they begin to look for the things that make them feel good, kind of the same that I did. Um, so depression is a big, 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 big one. And then I just want to touch on this. Parents on the other end of this, they're not having a fun time either. Let me just describe to you about parents of adolescents just for a second. And it kind of goes like this. We have these little tiny children that, they come and they're born into our world, okay, that we created, and we are their solution. We are their answer for everything. They're totally dependent upon us, and then one day we blink their eyes and it's like, I don't know how to help you anymore. And it's a hard realization. Then we're like, what didn't I do? Was I selfish to myself? What didn't I commit to you? How did I fail you? How come I can't solve this problem? What's wrong with me? And then it brings up a whole list of slew of issues with parents that we deal with. And then listen to this. If it's not enough that it makes parents feel bad, okay, that they feel bad themselves, it doesn't make it, but parents feel bad. If it's not enough that their thoughts make them feel bad, if that's not enough, what it does is when parents don't, when they are having shame and guilt for what their kids are doing, when they're having these things happen, the most important thing, besides not doesn't feel good, is that it limits their ability to help and support their kids. So so we have that all going on, right? And then this is kind of feeding the kid who's already feeling bad, right? And so parents like withdraw because they feel good and they're not there to support and do all the things. So ours is, we not every parent, when it's not a requirement, this isn't a combined thing, but we talk to parents and teens separately, but we do both because it's so important. And you can really, and I'll just tell you, it's possible to avoid those pitfalls because when people, now, a lot of times, I want to just touch on my big thing here just for a moment. I'm getting ahead of the conversation, but here's the deal, okay? when we as human beings begin to feel that we're okay. Okay. And I want to say that this is not something that, oh, yeah, I got self confidence. I remember that. I was a teenager. I was I'm a self confident person. I already did that, but she's not. See what she's doing right there? You can tell that that's not no confidence into doing that kind of behavior. But me, I already got that thing done. That is not how we or I view our self-image, our self-confidence. The way I view it is a lifelong pursuit of the relationship that we have with ourselves, because it's not something that you get and have and it's done. It's something that as life goes along, it's like something will happen and it'll be like, oh shit, what does that mean about me? What does that mean about my worth and my value? And it's something that is an ongoing pursuit. And when you commit to that pursuit, and you can do it as a young person, you can do it as a young person, and you begin to learn how to manage your mind and the thoughts that go through it, and you begin to make meaning about yourself, and you learn how to go through shame that we'll all experience, and you learn that you're okay. That's when we really get to see the positive results. Okay. Kids they can move out of this depression, and they start to look at this stuff, and they start to look around, and maybe they can begin to learn from somebody else, because you know what? I don't need that to feel good anymore, because when you learn that you can generate feelings with your thoughts.
Mhm.
Okay. And like I said, kids don't just learn this and it's done. It's a process, but the results that we see in a short amount of time are really incredible. And it makes it all worthwhile to see people move away from depression and into, you can feel it and see it. They change how they look, right? It doesn't take very long. You're like, is this the same person talking to me today that it was a month ago? Because I mean, you're like, you look like you look light. When you came, you look dark, so those are the kinds of things that we do.
Would you say that confidence is like the key or like the pinnacle moment of transformation when it comes to these different types of traumas that you're seeing? And then when you can get someone to believe and be confident in themselves, is that like the major turning point?
I don't know that it's necessarily the turning point. Some of us have to get to a place where the alternative to continue to go on is almost hopeless, or what they call hitting rock bottom. And I, and but it's not necessary. A lot of times it's like, well, you have to hit rock bottom before you can change. Well, I'm here to tell you, don't look forward to that day, and I wish you wouldn't believe it. I don't know that, learning that I'm okay is the actual why in the road, but now everything's going to be okay. I would say not necessarily, but because it's an ongoing lifelong pursuit. But as we, okay, as human beings, begin to take responsibility for our thoughts and know that what's and which cause our feelings, when we know that we have the power to be able to do that, when we know, let me ask you this: what if you could believe anything that you could about yourself, Amber? Anything. What if you could believe anything you wanted about yourself? Okay. Now, as you begin to, you can't just have that thought and you might not fully accept it, but as you begin to believe how you want to believe, which is a process, you can come to know, as a belief that you have, not just an idea that's rattling around, but something that you believe in your heart and your soul, that you're okay, that you're extremely worthy, that you're an incredible, you're just like priceless, you're invaluable. As you come to know that, okay, and that doesn't happen, that takes a little bit of doing, okay, and then you maintain it as you go along. But as you do that, things change in this world. I had the owner of the life coach school, Brooke Castillo, is the biggest, most successful, I believe, life coach school in the world, and she's been coaching for, I think, about 15 years or something. And she says that in all of the coaching that she's done over the past 15 years, and all the things that she's experienced in this in her business, that every person that she talks to, the thing that they want to change comes down to their own personal worthiness what they believe about themselves. I interviewed a lady named Cheryl Green who wrote a book, and she made a statement. She said that every negative human behavior traced to the root will come back to a negative self-image that you have about yourself. That's a big statement. Okay. Every negative behavior that human beings do can be traced to a root of how I feel about myself. I thought about that for a long time and I tried to prove it wrong, and I haven't. I believe this idea that we believe about ourselves is the single most important thing that we can develop in this world. We have 4 pillars, and they are faith in God, faith in self. I'm talking about faith in self, and then personal responsibility and communication. But I believe that this idea, and when I say, I talk about self-confidence or self-image, self-esteem, worthiness, all this is wrapped into the way that I believe about me. I call it's just one concept for me. Okay. It's the way I believe about me.
That's so good. And I agree with you. I teach confidence like myself. I have for years because I come out of doing photography, and I would have to tell people how to be confident on camera. And through the years, I've just learned a lot about just confidence in general. But I agree with you that someone has to really love, like they have to love themselves and change the perception of the way they see themselves. But I also believe that the thing is this, like it's not an overnight process. You can't just say I'm going to be confident or I'm going to believe nice things about myself. It's like a constant struggle of day to day self-talk that you have to like either silence or promote. And it's one of these things that it's easier said than done, but once you get to that place where you see yourself really the way that God sees you, when you start to see yourself the way God sees you, like you are an individual person. You're put here on this earth for a purpose. You're put here to do a certain thing. You have a destiny, and you can reach people that no one else can reach. I can reach people no one else can reach. We all have our assignment. And when you can start to see that, and then you realize like how valuable your assignment is and how you are the only one that can really carry out that assignment. And there is this frame of thought of like, am I doing the things that is going to make me pleased with myself? That's going to make me like, am I promoting these positive beliefs in myself? Like I'm doing the things that makes me proud of myself at the end of the day. Maybe they're hard things. Maybe they're time consuming. They're uncomfortable, but do they make me proud? Or am I doing the things that produce shame and fear and all the negative stuff? Because those things, while they feel good in the moment, they're gonna promote negative beliefs, negative self-talk inside yourself, because like you said it earlier, when something's wrong.
Yeah. Yep. I I love 2 things about what you said. Number one is the first thing that I heard you say that that I absolutely love is the idea that you're either going to promote this intentionally and purposefully, or you're just going to kind of let it happen. I can't remember how you said that, but the point that I took was that this is an intentional decision to promote. You have to proactively do it because the default is going to be hitting you with the negative. And so if you do nothing, you will accept the negative and it'll just like happen and you'll kind of be unaware of it mostly. Okay, so that's one. The second thing, I agree with you 1,000%, Amber, and that is that as we begin to see ourselves as God made us, I have basically 6, kind of steps that are on an ongoing pursuit of things, of takeaways, of skills, of how to develop this loving relationship with ourselves. Because in the end, okay, you will have the ability to give. Well, first of all, you'll be able to forgive others and forgive yourself better. Okay. You'll be able to know how to go through shame, have shame resilience, because, we're all going to experience some shame. That's part of the deal. And you be, as a result of you feeling better about yourself, the big end result is that you have the capacity that you did not have to be able to give to the people that you love and make your contribution to the world. Now, I just want to say that there was, for a long time, I heard all that I would constantly hear, well, you have to love yourself first, or you can't, to be, in order to be able to give to you can only, love to the extent that you love yourself, or something along those lines. Like, yeah, I don't know if that's really true. How does that go? What do you mean? I don't think so. I don't believe that, because I think that I can choose to do whatever I want, with someone else, and it doesn't have anything to do with me. I, I rejected the original idea, and I had this belief that it didn't matter what I thought about me because it wasn't affecting somebody else. And I want to tell you a quick story of how I came to know that I was wrong about that. Okay. And it was this, I heard this story. Okay. A mother has a toddler. The toddler spills food on the carpet and she blows up. Okay. She blows up at this little kid. Then she goes in the other room and she's mad at herself. She's like, I can't believe I can't hold my shit together. And so then she's yelling at herself, right? The next mother has a toddler. The toddler spills food on the floor. The mother says, oh man, honey, those things will happen. Let me help you clean it up. And then we'll see how to try to not have this happen again. She removes herself from the situation and she says to herself, I gave this child grace, I gave this child forgiveness, and I gave this child love. Okay. And so she gives herself grace, herself love, and herself forgiveness. And when she does that, okay, she's able to give it to the child. In the first example, when I'm yelling at me, what happens the next time the toddler spills food? The same thing. The blow up happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again, because it's what I have with me. Really, you can only love and give to the extent that you can love yourself. And I have seen that in so many examples prove that my original thought was wrong. It is key. And I think it's really the most important reason that compels me, and I hope it compels you and the world, to commit to this idea that we're going to, because of what we can contribute to the people that we love.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I've been that mom. I've been that mom that has yelled at my kid. And, I think looking back in those years, like the toddler years, I wasn't used to being a mom. I was an older mom, but I still made a ton of mistakes. And I look back at those times and I think those are the things I would yell at, and even still to my kids are things that I see in them that are the things that I also see in me that I hate. So, how do we get rid of those things that we see in ourselves, that we see in our kids? We see our kids, like, these characteristics coming out in our children, and you hate it about yourself. So, you yell at your kids. And it's really like you've kind of taught them to be that way by example. And it's a cycle. It's a cycle that happens. And I am of the belief, like, as parents, we have to, at some point, you have to grow up as a parent, take responsibility to the fact that we all have traumas, we all have issues, we all have things that have burdened us in this life, things that we feel guilt and shame about, um, which is why it's so important to get healed from these things, to try to go on this intentional journey, like you said, of healing and becoming the best us that we can be. Because how can we be there for the next generation if we're not even healed ourselves?
We will not be. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
There's one of the things, like I said, I have that we focus on 6 things in as keys to develop this relationship with ourselves. You brought one of them up earlier on, or alluded to it, maybe not in these exact words, but you said that we kind of have to do things that we're proud of rather than things that produce shame. And what the way that I describe that in our stable living is, we call it the principle: make a promise, keep it. Make a promise, keep it. So what that means is that I need to be able to trust myself. So it's the whole idea of discipline, right? If I decide I'm going to do something intentionally, that I do it and follow through. Because if I can't trust me, I mean, I need to trust me. I don't want to be one of those people I can't trust. I need to trust me first. So that what that means is being very intentional about the things that we set out to do and the promises that we decide to make, right? And choosing, like you said, things that we intentionally want to do, living with intention, setting an intention first. And then when we do, if we decide to make a promise, we keep it, because it's even if it's a promise with someone else, it's more important, it's most important that we keep it. And so that we begin to have, then you look at yourself and you say, I can count on me. I'm the kind of, I can count on me now. And I have discipline, because when I set something, I follow through with it. That's who I am. Okay. And remember that none of these things, we're human beings, we're imperfect souls. So it's not going to be 100% deal. So when that happens, because it's going to, right? You're not going to be 100% on your commitments to yourself. So that's the ideal. But when we do things, okay, because we're going to do some stuff. We've all done some stuff. You've done some stuff, Amber. And let me just tell you, if you haven't, I've done 10 times enough for you and me both. Okay. Some stuff that we have shame wrapped around it. You know, all of us, everyone listening to this show today has something that they'd rather not talk about that they did. And hopefully it's not rattling around deep inside of their heart still right now, but we've all done something. Okay. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a foreclosure. Maybe it's what you did to somebody else. Maybe it's something that there's something that you've done, okay, that you wish you wouldn't have done. And so the key to that is that one of the keys is to forgiving yourself is to learn to separate what you have done with what you are. Okay, to step back away from the situation and say, I did something, but that thing I did does not define me. Mm-hmm. It does not define me, because here's the deal. No matter what you have done, okay? Are you hearing me? Because
mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, yeah.
No matter what you have done, it's okay. You know, because here's the deal. If God can forgive you, I'm saying it's a good idea that you forgive you, okay? Because mm-hmm. without that, you don't have the capacity to forgive others and all this stuff that's going to be influencing everything else that you do. So we have to let it go.
Mm-hmm. And it's easier said than done. It is. I struggled with shame for many years over, my past, and it's been a hard thing to overcome. But a lot of that, it comes into just really being able to submit, like you said, just completely submitting to that. Like I can't change it, and having that grace and letting it go. Like you said, there's a book that I love, and it's called Letting Go. I think it's by David Hawkins or something like that. Anyway, it's a really great book, and it talks all about like this skill of just letting things go that we can't control. And when you've made a mistake in your past, you can't go back and change that. You wish you could, but the great thing about it, and I've seen this in my own life, this podcast was born out of my shame. The things that I do now, the outlooks and the views and the self-growth and all of the things, the person that I am today was born out of that shame. And I think that sometimes you can, the Bible says all things work together for good for those that love Christ and is called according to his purpose. So for what that says to me is, it doesn't matter what you've done. Those things sometimes can, because you've been there, you can reach back in and help pull other people out. And God will indeed use that. None of that's wasted. And it doesn't matter if it's decisions that was done to you, like someone did something to you, or it's decisions that you made yourself, decisions that you've chose to put yourself in these situations. And now you feel shame about that. Regardless, God can still use that. And I'm sure, and I would love to know your thoughts about this, but when you look back on your own past, do you see those places where you're like, that alcohol addiction, like this is catapulted who I am today, and it's catapulted this like now I can reach back in and I can help multitudes of people because I've been there. I feel their pain. I know what they're going through. I know the difficulties and the hardship and the pain and the guilt that they feel. Do you ever think about that?
I think about it 100%, and I love your comments right there, and I appreciate that question. Because the thing of it is when I get to see teens and parents, and when I get to see people making positive moves in their lives and changing how they feel about themselves and changing their behavior, that quite frankly, some of it scares me sometimes, this behavior. I mean, my behavior scared me. So uh, when I see that, I'm thankful for the things that I've been through. And I look back and I don't feel bad about all the years that I was hiding in shame. You know, I don't anymore. I did, but I don't anymore. I have to tell you, I interviewed uh, Chad Foster, a man named Chad Foster. He wrote a book called Blind Ambition. He's a total badass. And he sat in front of me and he said, Shane, I he said, I appreciate, okay, let me go back. This man, Chad Foster, was fully sighted as a young adult, and between his, say, about approximately 17 to 22 years old, he went from fully sighted to fully blind. Okay. Now, by the
Mm.
time I'm talking to him, he's in his 20s or early 30s. He's got a little son who he has never seen with his eyes. Okay.
Mm.
He never saw his wife with his eyes. Okay. And I told him, I'm like, how do you do this? How do you, how is this okay with you? How do you cope? And he said that he appreciated the fact and he would not go back if he couldn't have his sight, because the things that he has learned in his life today, the people that he impacts and the relationships he had would not exist if he was sighted. I said, what? You prefer to have it this way? Now, not that he could have his preference if he didn't, okay? But his belief, Amber, is that this thing that's going on with him is his blessing, and he uses it that way. And it's incredible. So I hear you and I believe it. And I love your story about that.
Yeah. Well, you look back on scripture where Paul talks about the thorn in his side, the one thing that he like struggles with, and the Bible doesn't talk about what that is, but it he talks about this. And I truly believe that sometimes those vices, those things that is assigned to our life, like God uses those in powerful ways. Sometimes I look back over my life and I see places that if certain things hadn't happened, certain things that I deem as detrimental, I mean, they were really hard to get through. But I look back and I'm like, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I'd be lazy. I wouldn't have this podcast. I would not be like on this trajectory. Like I am a huge advocate of self growth, self development, and
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't be on that trajectory in my life. So I, it's have I don't know if you've heard this thing. It's really a beautiful thing, but this I don't even know if I can pronounce it, but it's basically this Japanese tradition or philosophy about broken pottery. So where once the pottery is broken, sometimes they even intentionally break the pottery and then put it back together using a gold adhesive. You can look it up. I'll have to send you. I'll put it in the show notes too. But I have to tell you what it's called. But when you look it up, it's such a beautiful story of like really, I believe what happens to us. I had another episode where I had a girl, she had come on, she was broken as a youth, and then her spine was physically like she had scoliosis and she had to have all these surgeries, and she does pottery now. Like, it's just a beautiful representation of us. I see why there's lots of references to this, to pottery. And I love that Japanese tradition of like, because as human beings, we walk through this life, we are broken. That's part of the human experience that we experience here on this earth. But God so beautifully pieces us back together and he makes a mosaic of our lives. And if we allow it and we start to have this perception of everything we've spoke about here today on the podcast, I think it's such a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing, and I have heard of that, and I can't think of the word either. But the point that I take away from that is that you know the the piece, the result from the broken piece is is more beautiful than the piece that it was, as it were, before it was broken. And I mean, we are all the way we are. We're already broken, and so the the idea, my idea is why do we not look at ourselves and see the beauty that we've created? And then when we do, we um, we empower ourselves with the
Mhm.
ability to be able to give.
I love that. I love the way you just said that too, the word empower, because that's a perfect representation of it, in my opinion. Um, so I want to ask you, like, how can someone learn more about your program and what you do? Obviously, you're like hearing you talk like you're passionate about what you do. How can people get in your circle or in your ecosystem?
Yeah, appreciate that. We're at thehorsemanshipjourney.com, and we're on pretty much every media channel out there, or the website again, thehorsemanshipjourney.com.
I love it. And if you had like final takeaways or something you'd really like to leave our audience with, what would that be?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the trauma that you went through to be able to get the result that you have for this podcast and the people that benefit from it. I love this subject and your show. So thank you again for the opportunity. The message that I would leave today is this: that the commitment to develop a loving relationship with yourself, to learn to love you, to learn to come to know that you are a priceless, invaluable human being, it's not a good idea. It's not simply a good idea. I believe it's our responsibility and our duty as human beings, because without knowing that, without having as good of a belief as we can develop, without that, we've limited our capacity to give to the people that we love and to the contribution to the world, or and to make our contribution to the world. And so I would say to you, no. If you don't know, I'm asking you to know. And if you don't know, and I'm asking you to try to believe, to try to pretend, to try to do what you said, Amber, to make that purposeful decision to promote the idea that you are completely worthy, and it's okay for those things you did. And that's what I'd like to leave you with today.
And that's so beautiful. And I just you're like you have so much knowledge around this topic, specifically around confidence. And I do think everything really hinges. A lot of things hinge on confidence and how we see ourselves and can how we can view ourselves, the perception that we have. So if someone was interested in, like, do you run programs? Do you They would just need to reach out to you and kind of see what you have available, or do you do like group coaching, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have at this moment we have one-on-one coaching. Our program for teens and adults is called Stable Living. Stable, as in it's kind of a play with the horsemanship deal, but we offer one-on-one program with the four pillars that I mentioned earlier. Those four pillars are faith in God, faith in yourself, personal responsibility, and communication. Because I've come to believe that those, if I mean, life's complicated enough, and those are tremendously large subjects. But when you focus and commit to those four areas, man, things are going pretty good for you. And
Mhm.
so those are the things that we work on. And really, it's a matter of us learning how to manage the thoughts that are rolling through our mind. And as we learn how to develop that and we focus on these four principles in stable living, things really stabilize and things really start to move in a direction that we're happy with. And so that's our deal.
And just to clarify, so I know I kind of had this misconception when we first jumped on the phone, but I was like, you know, oh, you use horses. Like, I thought you used horse therapy, but really the horsemanship journey is more like a theme of like the different pinnacle theme of a horseman. Or do I get
Yeah.
that right?
I appreciate you bringing that up. The horsemanship journey has evolved. The horsemanship journey began helping people with the relationships with horses and people. Okay, that was the whole thing. And interestingly enough, Amber, the same principles apply because it's a relationship. And so if we're going to be excellent horsemen, we have to, focus right here first. And so we began that way, but as we moved along and kind of over the last couple of years as we've evolved as the horsemanship journey, we've seen the need and moved into coaching with teens and parents because I don't know, it's just such a volatile time, and it seems like there's such a need. Our focus is mainly on country and western and horse owners and country kids and farm and ranch families. You don't have to be that to be a part of our program, but that's kind of our niche where our main focus is. Just in that, a lot of times kids won't listen to their parents, but will listen to somebody they relate to. And so a lot of times me and the coaches that we have are really relatable for that, but it's not a necessity, but that's kind of our focus right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I do just want to say this too. Like, I know a little bit about horses, probably not nearly like as much as you do, but I do know a little bit. And I know that horses are extremely loyal. And I believe that sometimes if we think like, oh, we don't really relate to that, sometimes stepping out of everything that you feel like you related to can be beneficial. Like sometimes you have to step away to get a new perspective. So I just would like to encourage anyone that's listening, like, don't let that limit you. Obviously, Shane knows a lot of what he's talking about here, and when it comes to confidence. And if you resonate with him, whether you really resonate with horses or not, I would say definitely still reach out because there's a lot there to gain. And I did have an opportunity at a retreat that I was photographing. They have a horse. It's not a sanctuary, but it's like a rescue where she rescues horses. And so they do like a therapy, like horse therapy. And man, it's amazing. Animals have an amazing capacity to help you heal. And I know that's not exactly what you do, but I just want to encourage people to not let that be a limiting thought of like, I'm not going in that direction because of that.
I appreciate you saying that. Yes. And horses do. There's I think it was Winston Churchill was credited with saying that there's something about the inside of of a horse that's good for the outside of human beings. And I found that to be true. The horses are these amazing, extraordinary creatures that we've been blessed to have here on the earth. And I've been blessed to make a living in the horse business for my life. And there's a lot of lessons that we can take from these creatures and apply to ourselves. But I think that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. Well, Shane, I loved the time with you. It went by super fast. And I just really want to first thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I think it's making a huge impact in the world. And I think that's what it's all about, being able to reach back in and make that impact and use everything that you've been through for beauty instead of, using it for purpose instead of pain. So thank you so much for all of that.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to Through the Trauma podcast. If you have found value in this episode or believe in the mission behind what we are doing, please subscribe so that you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to check out our transformation project at transformationthroughtraumaproject.com, where we help inspirational stories get heard on a larger scale through multiple platforms. If you know someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.